welcome into another episode of the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Friday, December the 6th. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Matthew Parrish, Jeff Duncan, our Times-Picayune Saints team, minus Luke Johnson, who's already, it's such a big game, we had to send Luke up to New Jersey early. The 4-8 Saints against the 2-10 Giants. No, that's not why we did it. He's up there actually poking around Darren Rizzi's hometown and is going to do a nice profile on Rizzi that you can read in Sunday's Times-Picayune, probably available on NOLA.com sometime Saturday, I'm going to say. But he's still working on that. And, I think he's at Shea Rizzi right now, in fact.
Luke needs to learn when you go up early to a road game, it should be like either Miami or L.A. Or
Not New Jersey.
Not New Jersey.
It's not New Jersey in December, especially.
Right. So Saints play at noon on Sunday against the Giants, 4-8 versus 2-10. Jeff, you have the best historical perspective of any of us here. This is the most meaningless game the Saints have played since Katrina season, right? I mean, I guess they did play the Panthers game at the end of the year a couple years ago. That meant nothing.
They played some irrelevant games, but that's been one of the things I think the organization should actually be proud of is I think they played less than a handful of games that haven't mattered. Technically, this one, though, still matters.
It does.
1%.
It does. There is
less
that
than 1%.
Less than 1% chance the Saints make the playoffs. So technically, they're not eliminated. I think the Giants are eliminated, right?
And Darren Rizzi definitely doesn't think they're eliminated.
That's right. Yeah.
And the Riz isn't buying into they're out of it.
And I mean, if you're Darren Rizzi, that's how you have to look at it,
right?
Which we can talk about. First, want to let you know that Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. And with that, we're going to take our first break. And when we come back, we'll start our breakdown of Saints and Giants.
Nice bike.
Thanks. Can I get it back before Saturday?
That might be tough.
Whoa. Is it just you?
For now, let's take a look.
Can you reach that? How about?
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
All right, welcome back. Breaking down Saints Giants. It is noon Sunday on Fox from the Meadowlands. That stadium is like fairly new, but I hear bad things about it. Like people don't like that stadium.
I love that stadium.
Do you?
It's not like the best, but it's a nice. The press box is really nice.
Yep. Good
nice
angle, good sight line.
Good angle. Got a nice omelet station.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, if we're ranking press boxes,
matters.
The only time I was there, I was at a convention that was there like across the freeway in New Jersey, and they had an event in one of the like field level suites at MetLife Stadium. It's the only time I've actually been there, so I can't say I know the press box or anything, but I don't like. You hear complaints about the turf, the wind swirls, the kicking game is harder. I don't know. It's just
Well, yeah, I
weird.
mean, players don't like it because their knees just go.
Is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever been there that hadn't been like miserable weather, like bad weather. Even the Super Bowl
Just
I
killed
covered
Bobby
there
Hebert.
when the Broncos played the Seahawks. Like that Super Bowl was terrible. The weather was terrible. Maybe that's what it is. Too many people remember the swirling winds and hot
Bruno
dog.
Mars was good at that halftime.
From
good.
a Saints perspective, the weather is a factor here, Rod. I mean, they haven't played a cold weather game really in 2 years. Their only outdoor games late last year, as I recall, were in Tampa and then indoor stadiums. So it wasn't like it was cold. They've obviously got Green Bay coming up in a couple weeks that'll be worse. But I do think that's a possible factor. And they're going up today, which is a change. They're going up a day early.
Yeah, that was the reason. He said he wants them to sort of get accustomed to the weather. And I don't know if he was serious about this or not. Matt, I don't know. What do you think? But
I think it was serious.
The temperature in the practice facility, I mean, like in the media room and all that, was freezing this week. And I thought it was just somebody just forgot to adjust the thermostat. But Rizzi said it was intentional just to kind of get the team, prepared for this week. And I mean, it was because I made a joke to him. I was like, he was talking about they practiced outside, but it wasn't really cold. I said, y'all should have just practiced in here because it's freezing in the media room. But so I mean, I think it's something that they're definitely thinking about. And I mean, he's from up there, so it won't be a problem for him. And the players, I think Derek Carr talked about it. I mean, he thinks you just.
He said he was going to drive with the windows down.
Yeah, he's going to drive around New Orleans with the windows down. Like, that's not going to do it.
No.
That's not the same.
It's supposed to be 48.
Yeah, which is it's 48 now.
I was going to say it's colder here today than it is.
That's really not that cold. It might be windy.
No.
Although Carr does not have a good history of playing well in cold weather. Pretty small sample size. He hasn't done it a lot, but it's not something that he's had a lot of success
That's
with.
putting it mildly, I think. You're being kind.
Yeah.
His numbers are pretty bad.
I also think
With or without the weather.
if you look at where he would have played in cold weather, he was in the NFC West or AFC West. So you're talking about Kansas City, which obviously had really good teams. He played on Christmas Eve in Pittsburgh a couple years. I think that was his last start with the Raiders, actually.
Yep.
And Pittsburgh had a really good team. So I just there's a lot of noise in that fact, I guess is what I'm saying. The betting line favors the Saints. It's Saints by 4.5. The over-under is 41, which actually went up after the news that the Giants are starting Drew Lock over Tommy DeVito. Went up by a point or two. So we'll talk more about that, but that's the the betting perspective. The Saints have a reasonable chance.
Where did Drew Lock go to school?
He went to the greatest school in the American Midwest.
DePaul University?
Good guess, but no, they don't have a football
What's
team.
his? What's his perspective as a quarterback? I mean, is he?
He's got a huge arm.
I followed him a little bit, but I haven't.
He's got a
him.
huge arm, and we'll do when the Giants have the ball. He's got a huge arm, but I think he makes some rash decisions, and it takes him too long to process. And that's what we saw the Thanksgiving game. He's also fairly athletic. He can run a little bit, but you can also get him to turn the ball over. So we'll talk about it. First, I did want to mention before we completely break down this game, our transaction segment, which is sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. This may be the most important thing we talk about all day. Cam Jordan is the Saints nominee for NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year. We can talk about it a little bit, but we all know a lot of the things Cam does around the community. This is the third time that he has been nominated for this. And they announced the winner February 6th at the NFL Honors Show 3 days before the Super Bowl. With that obviously being in New Orleans at the Sanger Theater, I think Cam's got a reasonable chance to win this thing.
Please don't tell me you bet on it.
I don't think you can bet on that.
I think for every year, I always think
I would if you could.
I mean, you got Cam Jordan, and I think last year DeMario was he may have been or he's been. I mean, those two guys, they just do so much for this city. I just feel like both of them are probably worthy of it. But I mean, I'm here so I can say that. I don't know what these other guys are doing, but those guys definitely put in some work. And Cam is, I mean, every Tuesday on their off day, he's somewhere
Every Tuesday
doing something. And even this year, they had a practice on a Tuesday during Thanksgiving week. Cam just got up early in the morning and did whatever he normally does. I mean, he just always makes time for it. I don't know when the guy actually goes to sleep. I mean, he just
Yeah,
I think he definitely deserves to win it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've ever covered a player more dedicated to it than him. And, look, you can say what you want. We've all been there, right? We all have our days off. You want that day off to kind of catch up on things. I know he's a professional athlete, but you just want those days to get away. And he always takes that day off and takes the time to go do it. Whatever it is, 2 hours out of his day, he's still doing it. And I think it speaks volumes to, like, his commitment. And, we always make fun of Cam because he can be snarky and kind of the comedic genius that he thinks he is during interviews. But there's a side to him that I always tell people that it's a very serious side. And I think that shows the way he's committed to the community. And, I think he definitely should be rewarded here. It'd be a great way to kind of, I don't want to say end his career, but it'd be a nice tribute to a career that's been unprecedented in that regard.
is Drew the only Saint to win it? Because Drew won it. He's the only one. Okay.
We also asked him about, how many schools do you think you've gone to over the years? And he said, well, he's been doing it for 14 years, at least 16 times. now 17. Like, he estimated over 200 times, like 200. Some of it were repeat schools. There's only so many schools in the area, but
He literally may have been to like 80% of the public schools in the area. I mean,
yeah,
it's like a crazy number. I will say this too, just the type of guy Cam is. We do our Star of Stars banquet and show in Baton Rouge with the Advocate for all the local high school athletes in Baton Rouge. You know, each sport has its MVP, and then we pick an overall MVP. Rod, you've been a part of it before, and we. You know, full disclosure, we pay the people to come in as a company, and Drew Brees did it one year. Taysom did it the COVID year, I think. So it's like video. But or we've got Simone Augustus to do. We get some local regional athlete celebrity to come speak at this. And I've been to several of these things where I'm either kind of working as an usher or helping get the right plaques to the right people. Cam was by far the best athlete we've ever had do this thing. I mean, he was, and that's nothing against anybody else. I mean, they're just doing what they're asked to do, and they do fine. Cam stayed after he spoke, which he doesn't have to do. That was not in the agreement. He stayed. He would like sit. He'd sit here next to these athletes, and then he would move over a couple of rows and sit next to these athletes and like chat them up and ask them. I mean, and they're like starstruck. Oh my God, it's Cam Jordan, and he's just interacting with them. Truly like a man of the people. Just a really good guy.
Yeah, I was the one that interviewed him that night on stage, and yeah, he was working the crowd, and he relates really well with kids. Like he's kind of a big kid himself. I mean, that's kind of what makes Cam who he is, and you could just see that night. I mean, he's
like reacting to the video highlights of the high school kid, like the high school weightlifter who lifted up and he's going crazy in the crowd over the video. I mean, it's just stuff like that you don't see from professional athletes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he's a different kind of guy, and I love to see him get rewarded with this. And I think you see this even the social media posts yesterday when it was or whenever it was 2 days ago, whenever they announced that he was the nominee. I mean, like all these people just kind of flooding your timeline with their thoughts about Cam and just why he deserves it. So,
yeah, Man of the Year nominee. Again, with it being in New Orleans, he's probably like a sentimental favorite. It'll be interesting to see if he does get it. I'm sure a lot of these nominees around the league do really good things for their communities too. So I'm not going to sit here and say he definitely has to win it or anything, but I think he'd be deserving. And Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent retail grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. And our breakdown of Saints-Giants starts here. So let's start when the Saints have the ball. Guys, I'm excited to see Kendry Miller play. I think that's one reason to tune into this game is to see how the Saints use him. Darren Rizzi's basically said, you wrote this week, Matt, he's out of the doghouse. Anything that happened under Dennis Allen is let bygones be bygones. Like the governor is off of Kendry Miller, and we're going to see him run the ball.
Yeah, and Kendry Miller said that he was off the leash and ready to bark a little bit. So embrace the dog analogy. And you could tell that Kendry Miller really went, besides all like the public comments with Dennis Allen and how every time you ask Dennis Allen about Kendry Miller, it would just be like kind of a seething response. Miller said that he was healthy for this injured reserve stint, that he didn't really need to go on IR, that he could have played the Panthers game if he had needed to, but the original plan was apparently to take a week off, come back healthy for Atlanta, and last minute he says that he was put on IR and kind of implied that Dennis Allen was the reason behind that. So, he's healthy, he's ready to go. And I think Darren Rizzi has really done, he meets with every player, but he's really tried to improve that relationship and try and get something out of him because, he's only had 9 carries, but those 9 carries have looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think Miller should be really motivated, I think. His career has really had a lot of unfortunate stops and starts. But I thought what Rizzi said was important. He said, now you got to prove it. You got to do it. He's got an opportunity here. There's no question the organization wants to see what they've got in Kendry Miller, and I also think with Taysom Hill's injury, he's going to be one of the guys that I think they're going to have to replace him by kind of committee. They don't have one guy that can do all the things Taysom can do. Miller can take the load off the running game that they missed by losing Taysom Hill, but look, I want to be clear here. I mean, there's a reason he was in the doghouse. I mean, Dennis Allen didn't just make up stuff. You know, right. I mean, he's not just out to get Kendre Miller for no reason. I mean, there's things that have happened that led them down that road, and I think we need to be clear about that. And so he's got to step up and become a better professional, and I think there's a big opportunity for him to kind of get a fresh start without Dennis Allen around.
There's two things that you hear about Miller, and they kind of go hand in hand. One is the injuries. He just can't stay healthy. And the other is sort of the work ethic and, like, knowing the playbook in and out, and maybe some of that plays into why he gets hurt so much because, like, there was – Dennis Allen pretty much came out and said he got hurt the first day of training camp, and it was almost like he was without saying it directly, kind of hinting at the fact that he didn't think Miller was ready and in shape for camp.
Yeah, no, I don't think he was. At least that's what Allen.
Pull your hamstring like the first half hour of the first training camp practice. That's a bad sign.
And then as for the playbook, you know, Allen pretty much said that, like, I don't know if this guy knows the playbook because he's never available. So.
Yeah, and I think part of that also is, you know, we've talked about this before on the show, they do audits on who's got the tablet open, how long. They can see that, and I think you can read between the lines there how much he was studying.
And DA did not do that with a lot of guys. I mean, the fact that he called Kendre out, there was obviously something that was bothering him a lot. But, Rod, it does come at the right time for the Saints. Jeff mentioned it. Taysom Hill's out for the season. Alvin Kamara's been carrying a really heavy load. We all know it, and he's been doing really well with it. I mean, he's probably a Pro Bowler, but I don't think you want to keep giving the guy 25 touches a game either, so Kendre can kind of take some of that load off.
Yeah, this couldn't have happened at a better time for Kendre or for the Saints. I mean, the fact that Taysom won't be available. So, this is his chance. I mean, hopefully he can, make the most of it because he needs to. I mean, he needs to do it for himself. He needs to do it for and his team needs him as well. So I think we'll see a lot of Kendre Miller.
Yeah, we talk so much about the Saints want to establish a run. They get Eric McCoy back this week. They get Lucas Patrick back this week. They should be able to do that against a pretty bad run defense. The Giants are missing. Dexter Lawrence is hurt. He's not going to play. It's a situation where it plays into the Saints' hands to establish the run here and let that set up the pass.
It does, and we'll see about Cesar Ruiz. He missed Wednesday's practice, being in concussion protocol, practice Thursday. We're recording before this. But if he does play, this will be the first time since they've had their week 1 starting offensive line since week 3. So it's been a minute, and that line, I think, was surprisingly better than expected when healthy.
Yeah, and Eric McCoy got injured on the 3rd play of week 3, so they've really only had it for those first 2 games when they played so good offensively. Now, they had more weapons at wide receiver and all that kind of stuff at that time. But that's the hope, is that with the healthy offensive line back, you can really take advantage of a defense that has shown things at times this year, but they've got all these injuries, and now Dexter Lawrence, the big guy in the middle who, probably was having an all-pro type season for the first half of the season, and now he's out of there, is a big boost to the Saints offense. So.
Well, let's think about this. I mean, we talked about the weather. Could possibly be, could be chilly at least. The wind swirls there. The Giants have the last ranked run defense in the entire league. The only run defense worse than the Saints is the Giants. I think we can see the formula here, right? You don't want Derek Carr dropping back, throwing into swirling winds, cold weather. Just run the ball down their throats and get out of there with a win.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so flipping it around now, when the Giants have the ball, we talked a little bit about Drew Lock earlier. He's going to start. Popping up on the injury report yesterday was Malik Neighbors, his top receiver. Like, did he miss practice or was he just limited?
Yeah, he missed practice. So it said groin, but then Brian Daboll clarified today that it's actually a hip flexor. And so they haven't ruled him out for Sunday, but they're keeping it open. It kind of screws up a story I was planning on writing. So we'll have to see if that still goes through. But, that would be a big loss for them, especially because, God, they really don't have anyone. I mean, Darius Slayton has had an okay season. Devin Singletary's been a massive disappointment. They just don't have the horses there.
Yeah.
I think they're last in the league in passing offense. I mean, without him, that really hurts their chances of doing anything. I mean, I think they'll be trying to run the ball too. So
they will.
Two teams trying to just run the ball.
Especially if Neighbors doesn't play. Neighbors is among the top guys in the NFL in targets. I mean, when he's in there, they will pepper him with the football. And with Drew Lock, again, he's got a big arm. I mean, we saw it was a Monday Night Football game when he was with Seattle last year where he came in for Geno and won the game, and it was just an amazing. He's a little bit like Jameis in that he's got this huge arm and he can make these wow plays, but he also then will make a play that will just leave you scratching your head or look completely inept for a full drive. So there's a little bit of that. He kind of was told late that before the Thanksgiving game against the Cowboys that he would start, and so now he's got that full more than a week to prepare. So we may see a little bit, but I think you're right. Like, you got to run the ball. Tyron Tracy's been kind of a revelation as a rookie running back for the Giants, one of the few bright spots for them this year. Both these teams, this game, knock on wood, but it could go really fast. Like, it seems like both teams are going to be running the ball a lot, man.
Yeah, no, anything under 2.5 hours, sign me up.
Let's not go crazy now. There's like an hour and a half of commercials in an NFL game.
We had that last
Well,
week.
I meant 2.5 hours.
The game went fast last week, the Rams game. Once Sean McVay realized he could run the ball.
Let's see, a 1 p.m. start, over by 4 normally. If we wrap up by like 3:45, 4:50, or 3:50, that's
Eastern time.
Yeah, Eastern time. That's a win.
I agree, though. I mean, both teams, I think, going to have to try and run it. I mean, the defenses alone dictate that. I mean, the Saints really struggled. I know we're going to talk about the Saints defense, but I mean, they really struggled.
Go ahead, we're talking about it.
Okay, well, they're really struggling to stop the run right now. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's just nothing to believe it's going to turn around at this point. We're week 13, kind of are what you are, and their front seven, I don't think is going to magically start stopping people up front.
The Saints defense, they're bad. Back to you, Zach.
I think that's if this organization may be in line for a full reset. I mean, it just looks like it may be. That's a discussion for another podcast. Whether it is or it isn't, the run defense to me is a thing you've just got to fix. Well, you can't win games if you're getting gashed on the ground over and over and over again.
What's so disappointing about it is that, like, that's the one area that really hasn't been affected by injuries.
Right.
And so, I mean, maybe Pete Warner, and they're also veteran players. It's not like they have a bunch of rookies. I guess Brian Brzee
could improve,
still
maybe.
A little bit young, but like, they kind of are just what they are. And I just don't think they're very fundamentally sound, and they're just getting crushed. And I don't see that improving.
I mean,
the rest of the year.
The defensive interior is just not very good. It's not very talented. They're playing with guys starting that probably should be backups on other teams. And what I've seen happening when you watch tape is the run starts, the other team starts to have success, and then guys start freelancing because they're trying to make up for the problems up front. And once you start doing that, guys are out of their run fits, they're out of their lanes, and something breaks out the backside. And it's a classic case of, like, it all starts up front, and they got to get that solved. And that's only going to get solved through personnel and the offseason.
Yeah, there's and I'm blanking on his name, but Michigan has a defensive tackle who's supposed to be a run stuffer and is like a top 10 pick.
Yep.
And I know last year we talked about offensive tackle and how obvious it was for the Saints to draft an offensive tackle. I know D tackles don't go in the top 10 a lot, but man, it seems obvious. You just need a guy like that. I don't know. Anything else on the Giants offense, Saints defense, guys? Rod, this is a matchup they should do well in. I mean, the Giants can't move the ball against anybody. So
yeah, but I do think this game, if it gets ugly where both teams are just running, I mean, that means that the Giants are probably being successful and they're not having to depend on Drew Lock. And if that happens, it could be close and come down to something quirky at the end, a fumble, a missed field goal or something. So it's going to come down to who can run the ball the best.
I'm glad you mentioned missed field goals because I was going to mention in our special teams segment, Blake Grupe's 20 of 22 this year. He's kind of quietly having a really good season. There's other guys with more attempts than him, but if you make it minimum 15 attempts, he's actually 6th in the league in accuracy. He's hit a couple of long ones. He had a couple of 54-yarders. For a guy who was a big question mark for this team last year, and we weren't even sure he'd be back this year, I think he's been a win for the Saints.
Yeah, him and Matthew Hayball. Guys who had to fight for their positions in training camp have kind of been fine.
Did he miss both of his in the dome?
What?
He missed one in L.A., which was also indoors.
Right.
I don't remember the second miss off the top of my head.
That was
against
from 34 yards
Falcons?
last week.
Did he miss an extra point or something last week?
He did miss an extra point earlier in the year.
He missed
I feel
something
like
last week, right?
Yeah,
He missed
one
a field goal last week.
He missed a field goal last week.
Okay, so maybe it was last week then. So he missed one last week, and I think the other one was in LA that he missed.
But he's going to be kicking in some challenging conditions.
But
that's what I was saying. Yeah,
this
that's what
week. I
was
mean,
I
he's not
feel
going to
like
be in the
he's
dome.
better from 50 than he is from 35.
But this is not a game, to your point, Jeff. This and Pittsburgh, I think, are the two toughest places to kick in the league, statistically. This is not a place where you want to be having him kick a bunch of 50-yarders.
Right. But Rob made a good point. Like, just think about last week's game, talking about quirky things happen. I mean, the last play of Carr where the ball gets knocked out, I think he had a play earlier in the game where the ball got knocked out and they ruled it an incomplete pass. I mean, all it takes is that in a game like what we anticipate,
Right.
and the ball's going the other way and you get an easy scoop and score for the Giants. That can easily happen in a game like this. So, I could see something like that deciding this game. And Carr, for the most part, as far as throwing the ball, has kept the ball out of harm's way. I mean, I can't think of
He's
the
got
last.
four interceptions, and he has not had, he's not had a lot of plays where you're like, oh, man, he really got away with that
Right.
throw either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's done a good job of avoiding negative plays, but that's the one thing that I think would worry me is him getting the ball knocked out from behind. The pass protection, for the most part, has been pretty good, but there's a play or two every game.
Yeah.
Where Penning gets beat. We know he
Kayvon
struggled.
Thibodeau coming around that edge.
Yeah, even Fuaga's struggled at times with that off the edge, with speed rushers off the edge. So I could see that deciding this game, and it maybe coming down to a groupie field goal in that windy conditions.
All right, let's take our second break. We'll be back with our keys to the game. Jeff, I think, maybe just gave his key to the game, but we'll ask you to double dip there. We'll get our keys to the game and give our Saints-Giants predictions on the Saints Insider podcast right after this. Back on the Saints Insider podcast, I did look up the name of that. Mason Graham is the name of that Michigan defensive tackle who's supposed to be a top 10 pick, run stuffer. I mean, just seems it's a long way away, but that's a name you're going to hear a lot in draft season. Okay, keys to the game for Saints Giants: the 4-8 Saints against the 2-10 Giants. Although if they lose this game, the Saints may quickly be 4-10 with Washington coming to town next week. We needed that. We're getting a second bell for next week, baby. I'm already ready. All right, keys to the game for this one. Rod Walker, you want to start? What do the Saints need to do to get Darren Rizzi a win in his home state?
I think they just need to probably get off to a good start. And like this doesn't need to be one of those games where something bad happens early. They fall behind 10-0. Giants kind of get some momentum. And I just think the Saints need to just go in there and just kind of take care of business from the jump. Maybe score on the opening drive or something, just be able to run the ball. Because I think if the Giants hang around, I think this is the kind of game that can slip away.
And the Saints have done a good job of that under Rizzi. I think all three games they've gotten out to a lead. They've played really well defensively in the first quarter and kind of set the tone. And it's almost worked out with wins all three times, just not the last time. Matt?
You need to make Drew Lock look like Drew Lock. You can't have your backup quarterback looking like a Pro Bowl.
Drew Brees.
Yeah, exactly. It's a guy with very clear strengths and weaknesses. You've got to lean into the weaknesses. You can't give any big plays over the top. And I think actually Kool-Aid McKinstry's done a really nice job of not being targeted. And I think he's not being targeted for a reason. He's been a kind of a nice little find for them. I mean, he was a second-round pick, but actually having to play, he's held up. And Alontae Taylor, I thought, played better against the Rams than the last 2 weeks. So I think that secondary's in better shape than it was, and I would like to see them build upon that. And by doing that, you can't give up big plays to Drew Lock.
Did you know that Drew Lock, when he left Missouri, was the SEC's all-time leading passer?
No.
Yeah, I don't think he is anymore. I think Aaron Murray or somebody passed him, but he was.
Oh, there's also a great clip of Drew Lock rapping on the sideline when he was with the Broncos.
That is
all-time
fantastic.
Clip.
No, Aaron Murray is who Drew Lock passed. I think he's been passed by somebody since then, but anyway, he played all 4 years and racked up those passing yards. Jeff, you mentioned the turnover before the break. Like, you can't have, especially
Right.
one that leads to a big return. Defensive touchdown may just decide this game because there's not going to be a lot of points.
Well, if Neighbors plays, I think they got to have a Neighbors plan. Take him out. Can't let him get off against them. I mean, he'll be by far the most talented receiver in that game. So they need to have a plan for him, and then just like I said, avoid those mistakes like Rod mentioned. Get out to they have the formula. Get out to lead early. Don't give the Giants any confidence or hope. I mean, they rolled over against the Bucs because the Bucs came in and laid the hammer to them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have to follow the same kind of plan. If they get behind in a game like this, I think this thing could easily go south on them.
I may be thinking of passing touchdowns on Locke, by the way.
Yeah,
because he's been passed
I'm
by,
starting to question
he's
that.
been passed by Burrow and Bryce Young, but he was the all-time leading in passing touchdowns. Passing yards, he's still behind Aaron Murray, who played before him. So I might
We
be
have to
wrong.
have a fact checker on Saints Insider.
I trusted you, man.
Yeah.
How could you get that wrong?
He also has been passed, by the way, in career passing yards by Will Rogers of one Mississippi State
Norm's
University.
going to have to be our Tony
Rogers
Reale.
left out, man. He's up at Washington now.
Yeah. Well, then screw Will Rogers.
He went to the
didn't need
same
any more
high school
cowbell.
as Demario Davis, by the way. Will Rogers and Gardner Minshew.
We're on the random facts portion of the program.
It's Giants Saints, man.
All right,
we got Phil.
Giants Saints. Let's pick this big game in the Meadowlands. You can leave your pick in the YouTube comments. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the like button. Tell your friends. Sign up for notifications. All of that good stuff. We appreciate all of you listening. Luke Johnson, as mentioned, is not here. His pick, I believe, was 23-17 Saints. Yeah, that's 23-17 Saints. He's got the Saints winning a low-scoring game. I think that's going to be a popular pick, Rod.
Yeah, I got the Saints winning 24-20, but I'm not gonna say it was a hard pick. I mean, I feel like the Saints gonna win, but I do see some paths. I do see a path that the Giants can win this game. Like, I wouldn't be just totally shocked if the Saints went up there and blew this one. So
I don't like the word quit with NFL teams. I don't think they quit.
Yeah, I don't think they
But
quit.
I do think that there is an element of, do you have that motivation pushed all the way to the max?
Right.
And I think the Saints are in danger maybe of not being in that state, but I think the Giants are already there. Like at 2-10, I guess you could say they played hard and came back a little bit in that Thanksgiving game, but you talk about the Bucs game the week before that. Like, I just don't think there's a lot. Now you add in some injuries. We didn't even mention Evan Neal on the offensive line is questionable to play in this game. Dexter Lawrence is not going to play. We don't know if Malik Neighbors is going to play. I just think there's a lot of like the writings on the wall with Brian Dable, and are these guys going to go out there and play, turn it up to 11 for him, so to speak? And I think the Saints are more likely to get that for Darren Rizzi than the Giants are for Dable. And so I've also got the Saints winning 27-19 was my pick. Matt?
You know, I have the Saints 28-13. I would even.
Yeah, actually 28-10.
Oh,
is
28
what
to
you-
10.
what you said.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
10. Well, so if Neighbors doesn't play, I think I want to drop that to 6. The Giants just aren't good. Like, I think we're overthinking it. I mean, I think they maybe have the worst roster in the NFL. You look at the other 2-10 teams, the Jags, the Raiders. Like,
But are the
who's
Saints good?
roster? No, but never underestimate how bad teams are. Like, it's.
As the Washington Commanders beat writer for several years, you've seen some bad teams.
I don't, like, what are we doing here? I mean, I know the Saints don't have everything figured out, but they played much better under Rizzi the first 2 weeks. They played okay against the Rams. Like, it'd be massively disappointing if they lost this game, and I just don't think the Giants have the firepower to keep up with these guys. Like, I guess outside the run game, I just don't see that translating to a lot of points for them. I mean, maybe it'll get them into field goal range, but I don't know. I kind of think they're going to dominate the Giants because the Giants are bad.
I think that's a simply put, but well put. Quick story before we get to Jeff's pick. My 9-year-old son Jacob watches the very end of Saints Insiders on Friday only. That's what he likes to see our picks, and he always says, for whatever reason, Jeff, he thinks you look like a Paul, so he
Yeah.
calls you Paul.
That's what I said. It could be Pawpaw.
I could see it. You're Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. And he always says he can count on Paul for a Saints pick because you picked the Saints. My son's a Saints fan. Paul will pick the Saints. Paul will pick the Saints. Well, today, the other four of us picked the Saints, so surely Paul's not going to let us down.
Right. It's better than Ringo, by the way. I'd rather be Paul than Ringo.
You're kind of the Ringo of this group.
Here's the path I see to the Giants getting the upset. Is Saints have played 3 games in a row at home and a bye week. I think there's a little bit of potential letdown in this game. I think you alluded to it. I'm a big believer in that circumstantial stuff in the league, like when you play teams. And I think the Giants are catching the Saints at a really difficult time for them mentally after losing that game. I think it was a little demoralizing. They were all on the Rizzy train. So that's my belief, is that if the Giants get a lead early, they get a little life. And look, Daboll is probably going to get fired. I think we all agree. But he's a good coach. I mean, he's well respected in the league. I don't doubt that. And we're also underestimating the Joel Thomas revenge factor.
Yeah. Well, what about the Shane Lemieux revenge factor?
Maybe they cancel each other out.
Maybe they negate.
And I've just seen crazy stuff happen up there, in these kind of games. So I'm picking the Giants, and my track record says it'll probably be very accurate.
Your record actually is the same as the Giants this year.
Can I predict? I didn't look at
2-10.
You didn't say the score, right? Can I guess your score?
Yeah, go ahead.
17-16 Giants.
No, not too far away. 23-21 was Jeff's score. A little higher scoring, but
should
still.
have stuck with the 1-point margin, you coward.
I know.
This might be the only time you haven't picked a 1-point margin. So, look, if that does happen, I think we're fully into off-season mode. At that point, the Saints would be 4-9 and officially playing out the string. If they win this week, the Falcons are underdogs in Minnesota. We'll see what Tampa Bay plays Vegas at home, so they're probably going to lead the division. I guess the Saints would technically still be in it. We could keep the 1%ers alive for one more week. So we'll see what happens. We'll have a post-game show for you on the same social media channels, including our Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. We'll see you after this one, and we'll see what kind of effort the Saints give. For our producer, Norman Bell, he's Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, and Jeff Duncan, a.k.a. Paul. I'm Zach Ewing. This has been the Saints Insider Podcast.